Good afternoon, my friends, and happy Friday. I decided to do this impromptu live as today my heart is so full. We're here waiting, we are watching the verdict, we're waiting for the jury to do their deliberations. And I heard some of the closing argument earlier today. And I have to say, I was so touched by Alan Jackson's closing arguments. My heart is just full of hope and of joy and of love and admiration for the defense team, for the strength and the diligence that they have shown through this entire process, for never giving up no matter how many barriers were put in front of their faces. I have so much compassion and love today for Karen, for her family, the people who have been enduring this is in a real way. And I cannot even imagine. I cannot even imagine what they're going through today. So, some of you guys know that in this channel, I also have several guided meditations that I do by topic. You can check them out: forgiveness, anxiety, all different types of meditations that have helped me throughout my life, through my process. And I decided to create some and share with other people. So I thought today would be the perfect day for us to do a little bit of mindfulness exercises. And I am watching the verdict live, so they are in for an hour and 10 minutes. So we are watching that. If the court does anything at all, we're going to do it right away. And it's not, it's something very simple that I want to share with you guys. It's not nothing to be scared of. If you've never meditated before, if you have never thought about it, or if you have experience, it's very simple. Pretty much, I just wanted to invite you guys to join me in sending them some positive vibes, some positive energy, because there's a lot of anxiety in the air. There's a lot of stress in the air. And what does meditation and purposeful breathing do? They actually change our physiology, they change the way our body functions. We go from being stressed and being the fight and flight and what's going to happen, anxiety modes. We go from that, and by just breathing and focusing on something specific or just the breathing itself, we lower our blood pressure, we bring our heart rate down, it improves our circulation, sleep, and there's so many other benefits, including giving us calm, peace, compassion. So I want to start by showing you guys this wonderful picture, and this is the verdict watch, so we are live waiting for that. Wonderful picture showing the defense team here on the bottom left. This picture is actually missing Miss Little, but it's showing Karen Reed in the middle as this warrior, as this person that has been gone through the ringer. I mean, the judge alone, the decisions that they have been putting on this defense team, everything that has been happening, it's just so unfair, you know and today, from the closing arguments, from the closing of evidence, from the defense's case, it just gave me so much more confidence that she really is not guilty, that this is a whole case that was is being alleged against her, but that they had no proof over it. And it's just a position where somebody's just put in that position. They have to fight for their lives, they have to lose their money, lose their jobs and everything. And that's it. You just have to be at the mercy now of the jury. So today I'm wearing my Absolutely Not shirt. And I also want to show you guys Karina's shirt just arrived. Everybody can use a Karina in their lives. Isn't she beautiful, wonderful? Karina, who is always helping us, the moderator here in the channel, administrator on the Facebook page. So thank you so much. So, anyways, just for a minute or two, let's do this. We're going to focus on Karen Reed. We're going to take a deep breath in through our nose, hold, and then exhale. Again, we're just going to repeat that, breathing in through the nose, hold, and exhale. Now, when you breathe in, you can breathe in love, you can breathe in peace, you can breathe in light. You just allow the breath to go all over your body to the places that are stressed, the places that have tension. Hold that breath and exhale any fear, any anxiety, any worry. Today, there is no need to worry. There's no need for anxiety. We're sending positive vibes. We're sending love. So breathe in, hold, and breathe out. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for indulging me with this and this moment. We're definitely going to talk about the case today. We're definitely going to talk about the closing argument, what you guys thought of it so far. We are waiting here for the verdict. It's live. The jury has been there for like over an hour and what? An hour and 15. I'm trying to like an hour and 24 minutes they have been there, and it's just going. So shout out to all wonderful people, all of my friends. Sorry for the impromptu live here. Hi, Full Court Press, good to see you here. I did check out your channel and it's very cool. Karina, hello, beautiful, good afternoon. Happy Friday the 13th, and of course it's Friday the 13th. This is the Karen Read retrial, guys. Nothing average, nothing boring happens in this case. Everything that has, this case is the case that keeps on going, right? There's always something. And of course, the day the jury receives this case is Friday the 13th. So it has to be. Hello, Barbie. Good to see you. Hi, Bianca. Lucky Friday the 13th for Karen. Yes, sending prayers, sending positive vibes, sending hope and strength and perseverance, because oh gosh, what a valiant, brilliant fight that we have watched the whole defense team undertake. Let's see. So we got Lucinda in the chat. Hi, Lucinda. Good to see you. Hey, y'all. Cool shirts. Yes, I have the Absolutely Not. And I also have the wonderful Karina shirts. Everybody can use a Karina in their lives. Isn't she wonderful? Hi, Ask Bob. Good to see you. What are you doing? Are you in Canton? Are you outside the courtroom? Are you in the middle of all the people? I wish I was there sharing the positive energy with everybody. Good to see you guys. So let's talk about this closing arguments. I finally finished my mock closing argument. I woke up so early this morning, like 4 a.m., and I couldn't sleep. So I was like, why not do my closing arguments? And I typed it up. And by the time that I was uploading, it was like noon. And then I missed the closing argument from Alan Jackson. So I started watching it afterwards. And I was like, oh, I said that on mine. But of course, I've missed so much. I'm not an attorney. And Alan Jackson did a masterful job. It was touching. It was purposeful. It was powerful. And I believe it gave the jury everything that they need to go ahead and vote not guilty. Really, there's one thing in this case: the collision. If the collision did not occur, they cannot find her guilty on any of the charges. There is no complication, even though the jury instructions are so long, there are so many little details. If she didn't cause his death with her SUV, there is no case, right? So let's see. Ask Bob says, under my deck in Canton watching. All right. Yes, enjoy. So we're going to take a look at the closing argument. And I have not heard Brennan. And I hope I don't have to. I'm waiting for the jury to come back today and say, you know what? We've had enough. We've heard enough. She's obviously not guilty. This is a crazy trial. I can't believe there was so much impropriety. I can't believe the investigation was so poor. Not guilty. We're out of here. And if that occurs, I don't have to listen to Brennan ever again. But if we're still here, maybe we're going to listen to a little bit of Brennan as well. So let me go ahead and pull up the closing argument from Alan Jackson. And we can go over different parts and you guys can tell me what you thought about it. What were your favorite parts? If you think he missed anything, And let me see what's going on here on Court TV. So on Court TV, they are playing. Let me just share this with you guys so you know what I'm looking at. So Court TV is just replaying. It's replaying the jury instructions here.
That the defendant intended to kill,
so we're just going to pause. I have another window here showing me the live verdict watch through Law and Crime. We're going to go to the beginning of Alan Jackson.
Double doubt.
And where does that start? I'm going to probably put this a little bit faster so that we can get through as much as possible. And if you guys have any comments, please, I will read. I will make sure that everybody is participating here. So let me share like this. I love this. You're the last line of defense. Okay. Let me go ahead and start with this lady.
Testimony, not the lawyers and not mine. So if the lawyers or I say anything that doesn't square with your memory, it's your memory that serves. Secondly, there is
sit down, Judge. We've had enough of you, honestly.
Constitutional concepts that you need to understand. First, again, the burden of proof in this case is proof.
Such a good day. Such a good day.
And the Commonwealth bears the burden of proof. All right, the burden of proof is on the Commonwealth to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. And because of that, in Massachusetts, because the Commonwealth has the burden of proof, the Commonwealth goes last.
Lucinda saying yes, Bob is juror number 5.
I'm not going to stop them. So we'll start with the defendant's person.
Oh, Bev picked the foreman again. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Thank you, Bob. Let's see.
There was no collision. There was no collision. There was no collision. I want to take a minute to start off with thanking you. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for your diligence. This is not an easy undertaking.
I said that. I said that on my mock closing argument. I said, I want to thank you for your time and diligence while listening to this case. So I did start the same way as Alan Jackson, but I missed so much. I missed so much after I heard him. I was like, oh my God, there's so much that I missed. Barbie saying more trouble with the jury verdict slips. Bev doesn't care though. Yeah, even though we had that whole backlash last time, even though the jury was like, that's not how we voted. We didn't understand the form. Nobody signed the form. Nobody dated the form. The judge is just going to do what she's going to do. She doesn't care. Like, she's not worried about it, which is the theme that we have from Canton, right? From all the police officers, all the people who have testified. They are not afraid of accountability for some reason. And hopefully this case is going to change some of that. So let's go, Alan Jackson.
Most of all, I want to thank you for your courage, because courage is what this moment demands. Not just to listen, but to stare directly at injustice and say, not here, not now, not on our watch. That's what you're being asked to do. Stare down injustice. I want to start with a simple truth. You folks, not us, nobody else in the courtroom, you folks are the last line of defense. The last line of defense between an innocent woman and a system that has tried to break her, that falsely accused her, that tried mightily to bury the truth.
I love that.
This case was corrupted from the start. It was corrupted by biases and conflicts and personal loyalties that you heard about. And most fatally, it was corrupted by a lead investigator whose misconduct infected every single part of this case from the top to the bottom. In our opening comments to you a few weeks ago, we told you what to watch for. We warned you what to watch for. We begged you what to watch for. Watch for the physical evidence. Pay attention to the medical facts. Pay attention to the science and the physics. But also pay attention to the integrity, the very essence, the integrity of the investigation. But you also saw something during the course of the trial that none of us might have expected, something that should sadden us, something that maybe would anger us. On full display, you saw the lengths to which some police officers will go to protect their own at the expense of the rest of us.
And there's more evidence of that in this case than any evidence of a car collision, right? There's more evidence of the officers protecting one another. And I did point that out in my closing argument as well, my mock closing arguments. We have Brian Higgins being told, listen, we're going to look at your phone. We have the text messages from Proctor saying he's a Boston cop. He's not gonna get in trouble. And I also want to watch Karen Reed's body language today, which I usually don't focus on because I think she's the defendant. She's under an extreme amount of stress. But over over the lifetime of the case, I've received feedback that sometimes she looks in a certain way. And I think that so far there's a great connection going on between her, the attorney, Miss Little. So let's see how that's gonna go. How can you keep calm? How can you keep the correct posture when your life is on the line? So let's see more from Alan Jackson here. As Bob is saying, Bev is appointed for life by the governor. She isn't elected, and so she doesn't care. Barbie saying, I'm glad I live in Canton, not Canton. Don't listen to Brennan on a full stomach. I did not listen to Brennan at all yet. I'm hoping I won't have to. Come on, jury. Come on, jury. Come on. It's Friday the 13th. You have everything you needed. So let's go with Alan Jackson.
At the expense of Karen Reed.
And also let's look at the people behind and how
before
they
we examine the evidence in the case, which we will do, we need to understand the very foundation of the entire system of justice in which we operate. It's the bedrock on which this entire system is built. Reasonable doubt. This isn't just a technicality, and it's not a slogan. It's a constitutional shield that protects the innocent and prevents the government from punishing without proof. The Commonwealth has the high burden to prove every single element of every single charge beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. As I said, those powerful words are not just some legal jargon. They're your mandates, they're your obligation.
God bless you today.
They're your community's protection against injustice. In our system of justice, Karen Reed sits here today, presumed innocent, cloaked in the presumption of innocence. That presumption is not fragile. It doesn't just disappear because there's a charge or a badge or a theory. That presumption stands firm unless and until the Commonwealth clears that high bar, the highest bar the law provides, proof beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty.
I have goosebumps just looking at her. I really have goosebumps. It's just, it's your whole life taken away from you on an allegation. They are not required to have actual proof before they destroy your life. So you have to stop working. You have to spend all your savings. You have to hire attorneys. You have to have your health deteriorated, your sleep. You have to completely deteriorate fully in all aspects of your life because of an accusation like this. And it's just so sad to watch, the toll, the heaviness, the burden that she's carrying in her facial expression. And it's not her burden to carry, right? This is the Commonwealth's burden. But that's not how the system works. First, they put the burden on the person being accused. Later, many years later, however long it takes for the trial to occur, that's when hopefully the truth prevails. Corina says, Karen did not look happy when they were looking at the verdict slip. Yeah, because again, if they did the same shenanigans from last year, we had a problem with it. It went to the Court of Appeals. The jury came back and said, that's not our verdict. I mean, what else do you need to simply make it clear, to make a clear form? Barbie says, Karen looks so nervous. Yes, completely understandable, right, guys? Completely understandable. That's why I asked you to breathe in, breathe in peace and love and compassion, and breathe out any worry and send it out. Send it out, because it's amazing how sometimes our energy does affect other people. And no matter where they are, if you really have a good intention in your heart and you send it out, it might be received. So let's see what else Alan Jackson's going to say here.
That means at the end of this case, at the end of the trial, you think about one or more of the charges, you think, you know what, maybe that's true. It might be true. Then you vote not guilty. If you think it's possibly true or probably true, your vote must be not guilty. If someone among you thinks it's likely true or even very likely to be true, your vote is not guilty.
Okay, I used some of that on I'm just like boasting myself. I used some of that in my closing statement as well. I showed the reasonable doubt, the definition. And I said, even if you think it's, the burden is not to show a probability or even a strong probability that maybe this is what happened. The burden the Commonwealth had was to show you that this happened beyond a reasonable doubt. So that is a very key point that I believe the defense is focusing on. And I think it's very, very good for them because there's so much reasonable doubt. Another thing I did hear Alan Jackson saying earlier that I also added on my mock closing statement. I had not heard him before I released mine. I released the 2x speed earlier today, and later I'm going to upload the regular speed because it was taking really long. Another thing I said was about the coroner's testimony and that her testimony alone was reasonable doubt. So I also used that. Let's see here from Alan Jackson.
It's because none of those standards, maybe, might be, possibly, probably, likely, very likely, none of those meets the extraordinary burden of beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. A moral certainty means a level of confidence so strong, so incredibly unshakable that you could go home, you would go home, look your loved ones in the eye and say, I am certain. Not probably, not likely. I'm morally certain, and my certainty remains unshakable. The law defines moral certainty as the highest level of certainty known in all human affairs. Think about that. You must be that certain about the entirety, not part of, the entirety of the Commonwealth's case. As we discuss this case, you'll see that the Commonwealth comes nowhere near, nowhere close to reaching that extreme burden of proof. Ladies and gentlemen, on January 28th, 2022, it was a
And real quick, that's certainty, right? I've talked about this before. It would be so hard for me to be in a jury because I always think of like the person and, oh my God, how are they going to live in prison for the rest of their lives? It's a horrible situation. I don't want anybody to be there. So they would really have to convince somebody like me that the person did it, like for sure, for me to be able to vote guilty. I would not be satisfied with, well, it looks like she did it. She's sitting there in the defendant's chair, so she looks like a bad person to me. That would not, absolutely not be enough for me. Now, a case like Sarah Boone that we watched in this channel, I would probably be okay voting guilty there. I mean, we had video. We had her showing that she committed the murder. She put her boyfriend in a suitcase. She zipped him up. He was yelling for help. She didn't open the suitcase. He died. She was laughing about it. I mean, what else do you need? I would be okay with looking at my family members in the eye and saying, I voted guilty today for a defendant for homicide, for, I don't know if it was first degree or second degree murder in her case, but I voted guilty. Now, this case just has holes all over. It's just not possible.
Friday night, John O'Keefe and Karen Read made plans to meet up with friends, go out for drinks. You saw through video evidence and eyewitnesses that they were affectionate, they were loving, they were in good spirits throughout that evening. They started off at C.F. McCarthy's, which you've heard about, eventually made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill. When they got there, the Albert family, they were already there, and they were already drinking. The Albert family, it's been established as a very well-known family in Kenton. They've got quite the reputation. Brian Albert was at the Waterfall, a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there. She was with him. His brother, Chris Albert,
and now we're in 40 minutes.
He was there. His wife, Julie Albert, their daughter, Caitlin, and his sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, whom you met, and her husband, Matthew McCabe, whom you did not meet. They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. But also present at the Waterfall that night was Brian Albert's friend, Brian Higgins. We know that he had a romantic design on Karen. That becomes an incredibly important fact as we discuss the facts of this case.
She said he was hot.
As the bar was closing around midnight, the Alberts invited everybody back to their house. They wanted to keep the night going. But the evidence revealed something interesting, that the invitation to John O'Keefe appears to have been for a different reason, an alternate reason. Think about the video of Brian Higgins and what Michael Proctor in his investigation completely and utterly ignored. Higgins was agitated after a day of drinking, agitated that it was John and not Karen, John with Karen, not him. Recall that ominous text that he sent to Karen with her and John standing just feet away. Well?
I'm here. Hello. You said I was hot. What?
And then we see this.
Let's hang out.
That's what Brian Higgins was confronted with following his
video is so
well text.
Terrible.
What of all things starts going through Brian Higgins' mind? Where does his mind go? What is he thinking about after seeing this, after witnessing this?
So he's the one right here with the thing on the back.
If Michael Proctor had been the least bit interested, this video would have shown him too.
And Karen and John are to the right, kissing, hugging. And he's trying to fight with what? Brian Albert, Chris Albert. Oh, look at that. It's the first time I see this video so clearly after 2 years. He's like, look at me. I'm right here, Karen. And she's like, who are you again? I forgot your name. He's like, you said I was hot. You think I'm hot? You like me? Oh my goodness. From behind.
Sparring. practicing fighting techniques. Where was Brian Higgins' mind? What was he thinking about? And then what happens? Before you look at the
Thank
next
you,
video,
Clayton. No
think about what you're
context.
going to see.
Talk
This
about
next video
Brian
is after he
Higgins,
sees
though.
John kiss Karen on the forehead, after he sends that aggressive text to Karen with her standing just feet away. Watch closely, and this is what you're going to see. This is what Michael Proctor and his investigation completely ignored.
They completely ignore.
Higgins is very clearly upset. He's agitated. Chris Albert tries to control him, tries to talk to him, calm him down perhaps. Chris forcefully grabs Higgins' arm. You'll see that in the video that you're about to watch. It appears that Chris is trying to calm him down from something. Brian Albert's standing right there with the other two men, but Brian Higgins is having none of it. He appears to be hyper-focused on one person and one person only, John O'Keefe. In an instant, Higgins angrily jerks his arm away from Chris. Higgins rubs his brow, and he directly gestures at John, a gesture that looks a lot like, let's step outside. Let's go outside.
Yeah, it's cool.
But John looks
Cool
at him, takes a swig
down.
of beer,
Cool off,
completely
sir.
ignores him. Take a look.
Oh, they really are. Like, let's go. Let's go. He doesn't want to go. He's really trying to like peacock, right? To show off, to get some attention, and she's not looking at him at all. John is just drinking his
Michael
beer,
Proctor,
wearing
the
his
lead
hat.
investigator in this
like,
case, had all this
I
footage,
have no
but
idea
he
what's
did
happening.
nothing. He had access to the exact same thing that you saw. Why did he do nothing? A few minutes later,
So real quick, I don't remember this video being so clear in the first trial. Corinne is saying it was funny that the defense showed a clear video, but Hank's video was not at all clear. I mean, the prosecution of this case, Brandon specifically, right? That he usually says specifically. Brandon specifically, it's hard for me to say as well, demonstrated like unethical behavior. He claimed things to the court that were not true. He introduced questionable evidence. He lied to the jury. Like he introduced the DNA that he had not introduced as evidence by his testimony. He testified about the hoodie, and there are so many other things that he did, and he just showed how low he's willing to go in this for whatever, for this trial specifically. What's happening? I think there's something happening. The judge is talking. Hold on. I'm going to share this. Hurry up. Okay.
Into the case. If you happen to see,
Just letting
hear,
them
or
go,
read
right?
anything about the case, please disregard it and let us know. Do not talk to anyone, and that includes each other. So when you walk out the deliberation door, you have to.
Yeah, they're
talking about
great,
the case.
Micro
And then
Dots.
when you come into the courtroom, don't mutter anything to each other. Certainly not on the.
Don't mutter
or
anything.
Anything like that. So it's very important that you.
1 hour and
You
45
cannot,
minutes
even if you get
today.
here before you're called into court on Monday, you can't discuss the case then either. And that goes for the alternates as well. So, we really appreciate that. Watch your social media use and the papers and the news. Stay away from all of that if you can this weekend. See you Monday
If you
morning.
can, if you can't, that's fine. Oh man, who is hoping for a verdict today? Who is hoping for a not guilty verdict today? Friday the 13th. Wah. Okay, so I guess we're going to, let's just wait to see if the court's going to come back to say anything. The attorneys are going to say anything. Look at her. She has like different facial expressions. One is for the jury, you know, the fake smile. Good morning, juries.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has a good weekend with no work.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have a good weekend because we're still waiting for this, but bye. Bye, Kanoni. Bye. See ya. See you never. Okay, so I guess I'm going to make this again muted just in case. You never know if, you know, anything's going to pop up. And we're going to go back to the closing statement, the closing argument here from our wonderful Alan Jackson. Masterful freaking attorney, man. Seriously. So let's see. Lucinda is saying I was hoping for one at 227. That would have been something else, man. this case is just, it's just so much. There's just so much in this case. Barbie says, I hope right after Karen is found not guilty, the feds go round up the real culprits, or when the feds go marching in. When the feds go marching in, I want to be in that courtroom when the feds go marching in. Ay, ay, ay. If you guys are new here and I keep calling Stephen Warwick, Barbie, is because that is her name and this is her boyfriend's account. So that's why I keep calling her Barbie. Let's go back to Alan Jackson, shall we? Let's go. Come on.
Higgins then texts John directly. You coming here? 3 question marks.
After
It's
he
now
texted
12:20
Karen,
a.m.
she didn't reply.
These guys are not good friends. They barely spoke or even acknowledged each other when they walked into the bar together, other than a quick greeting. So why was Higgins coaxing John over to 34 Fairview? You coming here after this? And why not text Karen?
Wow.
Because at that moment, he wasn't interested in Karen. He was interested in John O'Keefe. This is about 5 minutes before John gets out of the SUV and walks toward the house. About 5 minutes before Karen sees him alive for the last time. So what happened inside that house, or that basement, or that garage? What evidence was there for the investigators to look into? What did they ignore? Laceration over John's right eyelid, black eyes, a large dog at the home, an obvious dog bite on John O'Keefe's right arm, a head injury from falling backward onto a hard surface, alleged surface, a text from Higgins, one of the last people to ever communicate with John O'Keefe.
All ignored.
Those words now echo in the wake of John's death. But Michael Proctor, he didn't listen. When John didn't.
Now, I also, on my mock closing argument, I also emphasized what did the investigators fail to do? What did they fail to do? I think it was very important to emphasize that because, you know, they are using the Bolden defense, like the lack of investigation or sufficient investigation in this case. It's obvious for that. I did use that. I think it's very important. One thing that I did not hear Alan Jackson doing that I used in my mock closing argument. So if there was anything that I would add to his, because his closing argument is perfect. The one thing I did use, and then I heard Brennan say it in the beginning of his, is I emphasized how valuable Mr. O'Keefe was of a person, his character, the recognition that he had in the community for taking the niece and the nephew after the tragedy that his sister passed away, the kid's father passed away shortly after. And I emphasized that, and I kept repeating that he deserved better, that Mr. O'Keefe deserved a better investigation. And I think that if that Alan Jackson could have maybe added that, you know, just because the jury, a lot of times they are looking at a case and thinking about a victim and the victim's family, and they are looking to do justice. They want to do justice. And if the case is not showing them enough evidence to give them, to have them do something, they might say, okay, let's just find her guilty on this little charge or that little charge because we want to do something. So I think like we want to have a vindication for the family and for the victim in this case. So I wanted to, if I were the attorney in this case, I would want the jury to join me in the indignation that Mr. O'Keefe, the victim, yes, did deserve better. And who failed was the investigation and the Commonwealth. So just a little... why Rick? That's how you say it. I was gonna say, who is Rick? That's how my brain sometimes is so slow, you know, to catch up with you guys. Clayton is saying, officers risk their lives daily for strangers. To be a cop, one has to be honest. Some aren't. Definitely. And that's the whole thing. It's not so far-fetched to imagine that there are bad apples in the police department because we hear about them all the time. But when you are sitting in a jury, sometimes it's hard to actually think about that. Not that I have ever been in a jury, but just from understanding like human behavior and how we look at authority alone. You know, you look at somebody with a uniform or an officer, detective, usually I automatically treat them with respect. I don't go like, I wonder if you're one of the bad apples, if you understand what I'm saying. So here we go with more Alan Jackson.
Come back outside, Karen, very oblivious to what had happened, thinking she was just left alone in the car out in the cold in the middle of the night. She got frustrated and she drove home. She arrived back at home and her Wi-Fi connected to her car or phone connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m. It's an important time, 12:36 a.m. She left John voicemail after voicemail after voicemail. He was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. The longer he didn't respond, the more upset she got. Her voicemails reflect that frustration after the fact. That's the frustration that you hear in her angry voicemails. She uses harsh words and foul language. She's obviously upset. She's obviously irritated because he didn't come back out of the house and he wasn't responding. But Karen did not know what you know. She didn't know what the investigators should have known. She didn't know what was happening with Higgins.
We're all mad here. What happened? Why are you in the hospital? You don't need to tell us. But hey, we're here for you. I'm glad you're with us. Thank you for joining. It was impromptu live because I just couldn't handle my emotions inside of me. I was about to explode and I needed to be with you guys. So thank you for finding our impromptu live. And I hope you feel better. I hope everything works on your favor today, Friday the 13th. So let's keep going with Alan Jackson.
And Albert, and with her boyfriend.
Oh,
John
baby.
O'Keefe.
Sorry.
When he didn't come home at about 5 a.m., Karen went looking for him in a panic. As you know, her worst fears were realized when she found John beaten, battered, bloody, and left in the snow in Brian Albert's front lawn. At 6 a.m., when Karen found John, you heard about the scene. It was described in detail. It was chaos. To use Mr. Brennan's word in his opening statement, it was bedlam. The screams for help by Karen, the yelling and the hollering, ambulances, emergency lights, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol officers, all of them swarming all over the lawn just under Brian Albert's bedroom window. And of course, as you learned during the course of this trial, Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder trained in being a first responder, never came out of the house. Never went outside to help a fallen fellow officer.
Yes. Great
Who was laying on his
point.
own property.
Yes.
Never came out.
Weird.
We learned through the
odd.
undisputed evidence that the lead investigator,
And-
Michael Proctor, for his part, never went into the house.
And here, when I said that in my mock, I said he never came out of the house. He could have helped. They were trying to do CPR with him outside. Karen Reed, Carrie Roberts, Jennifer McCabe. They called 911 and were trying to do CPR. Brian Albert could have been doing CPR. He was a trained EMT. John O'Keefe deserved better. So I added that phrase a few times, and I think that it just invites the jury to join you in the indignation and how they treated the fallen police officer in this investigation.
The Commonwealth has struggled to try to prove that John O'Keefe ended up in Brian Albert's front lawn because he was struck by a vehicle. They have failed. They cannot and they will not ever be able to prove that John was struck by a vehicle beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty, because the science does not lie, the medical evidence does not lie, the physics do not lie. Their investigation was flawed from the start because their investigator was corrupted from the start by bias, personal loyalties. Folks, they cannot prove a collision. John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. There was no collision. So let's start there.
That's his key
I want to take a minute to discuss the actual
that he
science, the
wants to
actual physics, and the
emphasize.
actual medical evidence that was presented in this case. The science, it's an old saying, is known as the silent witness. It doesn't lie, it doesn't forget, and notably, it doesn't take sides. If there was no collision, what are we doing here?
Why are we here?
In order for there to be a collision, there has to have been an impact site. The vehicle had to have struck John, period. I want to remind you of some of the most important testimony in the entire case, and it comes from the Commonwealth's own medical expert,
Dr.
Irene Scorbello, the Commonwealth's medical examiner, someone governed by law to make these decisions. We know that a person struck by a vehicle suffers massive trauma, broken bones, fractures, soft tissue damage, torn ligaments, contusions, soft tissue injury, severe tissue injury, crushing blows. None of that was present with John. None of it. Not anywhere on his body, including his right arm. Not one bruise. Nothing. The fact is, the injuries are not from a vehicle impact. Not his head injury, not those scratch and bite wounds. Not a single medical expert. Think about this. Not a single medical expert called by the defense or called by the Commonwealth has testified that John was hit by a car. Not one. Think about the irony. Not one. That's not just significant. It's literally the most important point in the entire trial. Listen again to Dr. Scorbello's words. Question. You did not include in your autopsy, in any fashion, any discussion of whether Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with a motor vehicle accident. Did you? Answer. No, I did not. She told you, quote, I did not see any evidence of an impact site, end quote. She was talking about John's body. The Commonwealth's own medical examiner, Dr. Scorbello, performed the autopsy. She did it personally. She's the only one to have personally examined John's body, and she found no evidence of an impact site on his entire body. That in and of itself is reasonable doubt. You don't need anything more. The Commonwealth's case is done. It's cooked. Their own expert said there is no evidence of a collision, no evidence of an impact.
Collusion, yes.
If you want to know what an impact
no.
looks like, take a look at this. This is what a body looks like after being struck by a car
Now take a
25
look at
miles an hour.
this. Can we see
And this
it?
is what a car looks like after hitting a person at 25 miles an hour. These are exhibits from Dr. Welcher, the Commonwealth's expert.
We can't see it.
John,
Prayers for healing Ahmed. JP Palm, good afternoon. Happy Friday the 13th. Massachusetts is a sewer of political corruption like Bev. Absolutely not. Absolutely not, JP. I concur, actually. We're all mad here. The jurors have left for the day. They have indeed. They just left for the day. I don't know why my microphone keeps changing. I hope it doesn't change on your end, but I have to figure it out. So let's see. Karen's under spiritual attack, trying to martyr her for what the real murderers did. Something happened that night, guys. Something definitely happened that night. The Commonwealth has not proven that a car collision killed Mr. O'Keefe, and we might never know what happened to him. And that is something difficult for the jury to swallow, because the jury is trying to find the facts. They want to have an answer. They want to be able to complete their task. And the only option they are being given is the defendant, Kara Reed. There were no other suspects. There was no other investigation. So, we'll see. Let's go, Alan. Let's go, Alan.
didn't even have a bruise. Make no mistake, Dr. Scortibello was presented with the Commonwealth's theory of the case, the same case that you've been presented with, and she refused to conclude that John's death was a homicide. She flatly refused to conclude that there was a collision. And you know who agrees with that? That silent witness, the science, the physics, the data.
I had never heard that before. Now, it just reminded me, okay? Yesterday, I went to visit a friend of mine that is in the hospital, and he was in a car collision. He was riding a bicycle, like an electrical bicycle. So those like very strong bicycles. And this car didn't see him and hit him at a low speed. I'm not sure exactly what the speed was. I should have asked. I didn't even think of asking. He has like staples from the beginning of his thigh, from like the femur, the whole femur, all the way to his knees, to his knee. He had, I think, some type of thing was inserted in his leg. His forehead was shaved in the pavement, so there's like different areas of bruising. There's different scrapes on his knees. His hip, so he went straight to the ER for surgery. His hips, I think they were shattered as well, like little pieces of the bone. So he was showing me the X-ray. Like he has several injuries from a collision, and he was not like a pedestrian standing there. He was on a heavy bicycle, like an electrical bicycle. So it just doesn't make common sense that a car would, an SUV, a heavy vehicle, would reverse into someone at 24 miles an hour and nothing would happen to their body, just like they would get scratches in their arms. It just doesn't make sense. And I think this time, this case was presented so differently, right? It was just such a different case. If you have not watched it, last year we watched the Kara Reed trial, the first trial, and it was a complete different case. We spent hours and hours and hours. The prosecutor, talked about things that were so irrelevant. The defense also emphasized the third-party culprit defense, and sometimes it was a little bit over the top. It was just a little bit too much. It was draining. This time, both sides were more concise. And I think the defense is doing a great job of focusing on the investigation, on reasonable doubt, and the lack of injuries that would be consistent with the car collision. Thank you, Barbie, so much for gifting memberships. Thank you. I love it. Yes. Please, guys, if you haven't done so, like, subscribe, leave a comment if you like the content, and check out the other videos we have, especially the meditation ones, because there's so many benefits if we take like 5 minutes a day to do some mindful breathing. So let's go back to Alan Jackson, our best guy today. He takes the win for the day.
Dr. Wolf and Dr. Rentschler, you just met them recently. They explained they were not initially hired by the defense. They were asked by another agency to conduct their analysis.
FBI.
They looked at the evidence from both sides, not taking a side for the defense or the Commonwealth, completely independent. They looked at the damage to the SUV on the one side of the coin. They looked at the injuries to John O'Keefe on the other side of the coin.
And
both PhDs, both engineers determined there was no collision. I'm not saying it. The science says it. That SUV's taillight was not damaged by striking an arm, and John was not struck by a 6,000-pound SUV. Period.
6,000
Full stop.
pounds. Okay, that's
Dr.
what I
Dan
was
Wolf
trying to remember.
did the testing on the taillight. Actual testing, not some ridiculous blue paint kindergarten project. He did lab testing. He did field testing. He did data testing. Actual impact force analyses. In
love
every
it.
single test, at every single speed, the taillight damage was inconsistent with striking an arm. In every test, the taillight damage was inconsistent with damaging the shirt.
Dr. Welcher deserves all the shade. He deserves all the shade in the world because he's a condescending, arrogant person who was just so difficult to watch. I'm actually working on a video about the judge and the objections and everything. And it takes so long, okay? Because I have to listen to like hours and hours of testimony and just clip what I want. And I went through Dr. Rentschler, I went through Dr. Wolf, I went through Dr. Laposada, and the next person I have to go through, and I started and I stopped, is Dr. Welcher. And it's just so hard for me to like listen to his testimony because he was impossible to listen to. And he deserves all the shade. He deserves being called having a kindergarten project with the blue paint. I love it. I love it. I think that I'm surprised that there was no objection, but great job, Alan Jackson, once again.
Sweatshirt. Remember that severe internal damage to Karen Reed's taillight. Not just the outer lens. The internal diffusers were completely smashed, completely shattered.
Oh, no.
Arca testing established that all the internal components of every single test taillight, especially the diffusers, remained completely intact. Conversely, on Karen's taillight, the diffusers were almost completely gone. Folks, understand something. If any part of that diffuser portion of the taillight is broken, there is no light. It doesn't illuminate at all. It's just black. Let's take a look at a couple of photos. At 5:07 a.m. at One Meadows, that's the photograph on the left. What do you notice about the right taillight? It's completely illuminated.
They're lights.
Later,
I
at
see
4:12
red
in the
lights.
afternoon, photograph on the right. It's lit up. How can that be? How can that be if the Commonwealth claims that those diffusers, the portion that lights up the light, were already scattered all over 34 Fairview? That's their theory.
47 pieces.
But don't believe your lying eyes. The taillight's completely lit up. That would be impossible. Dr. Andrew Rentschler, PhD, a biomechanist, explained that at those speeds, the other side of that coin, John's arm would be basically destroyed. Contusions, swelling, torn ligaments, hyperextensions, dislocation of joints and bones, fractured, broken, and shattered. But as you know, John's arm was pristine, save those dog and claw bites. He didn't even have a bruise. Think about this. Think about that photo of those x-rays as you deliberate. You can manipulate a taillight fragment.
Intact bones.
That's not that hard.
Perfect
You
condition.
can't manipulate a bruise. If they claim the car was going fast enough to shatter the taillight and shatter the diffusers, then it was also going fast enough to destroy and shatter John's arm, and it simply did not.
6,000
How do they
pounds
square that?
SUV.
They don't, and they can't. So they
24
spent nearly
miles an hour.
$400,000 of taxpayer money to hire someone to dress up and look like John and paint his arm blue.
Ah, did he say?
Which told you exactly.
Did he say how much? I was talking. I'm sorry. Let me see. Did he say how much?
Right. Contusions, swelling, torn ligaments, hyperextensions, dislocation of joints and bones, fractured, broken, and shattered. But as you know, John's arm was pristine, save those dog and claw bites. He didn't even have a bruise. Think about this. Think about that photo of those x-rays as you deliberate. You can manipulate a taillight fragment. That's not that hard. You can't manipulate a bruise. If they claim the car was going fast enough to shatter the taillight and shatter the diffusers, then it was also going fast enough to destroy and shatter John's arm, and it simply did not. How do they square that? They don't, and they can't. So they spent nearly $400,000 of taxpayer money to hire someone to dress up and look like John.
He did say $400,000 of your money. You, the taxpayer, is paying for $400,000 for that guy, the joke that came in here, to show you a video where he painted himself blue and he wore the same clothes as Mr. O'Keefe. That was the test. That was the test. So we're all mad here saying it's powerful. I'm scared. She's referring to Hank's closing statement. I haven't watched it yet. Maybe we're going to watch it together. I am not scared. I think that the defense has a very strong case. I find it absolutely not possible. I find it absolutely not possible that the whole entire jury is going to vote guilty on any of the counts. And I think that worst case scenario, there could be a possible mistrial. But of course, when I said that in the past, somebody said, no, the worst case scenario is that she's found guilty. but I don't think the evidence supports that. So when we watch Hank, maybe we'll watch him tomorrow. Like, I don't know if I can handle it. We'll see. I'll give you my honest opinion. I'll give you my honest opinion. Corinna says, I didn't watch Hank, but his voice grates on me. I was a few hours late, so I just fast forward through him. That is exactly what I did. I mean, first I woke up at like 4 a.m. and I started making my closing arguments. And then by like 6, 7 a.m., I was still like editing the video a little bit, cutting parts that I kept getting, wrong and stuff. And then like my system took a few hours, I don't know, an hour to export. So by the time I exported, the video was like new. That's when I started listening to the closing argument from Alan. And then it was like jury instructions. I was like, no, let's go live. Forget Hank. Who needs to listen to his annoying voice and his anger, because today when I listened to Alan Jackson, it gave me so much hope and it put me in such a positive state of mind that I honestly didn't want to ruin that by listening to Hank. He just has so much anger and he just has displayed such an unethical behavior and lies that I just didn't want that toxicity yet. But of course, we have to look at both sides. We have to, and I have talked to you guys about it when we did our live regarding Proctor testifying. I said I would call Proctor, I would call Brian Albert. I still think the defense made a mistake of not calling Michael Proctor, not calling Michael Albert, not calling Brian Albert, because I believe the jury needed that emotional connection, with the negative behavior they have displayed, with the suspicions that we have, with the text, and Brian Higgins too, with deleting the text messages, with getting rid of their phones. The jury needed that emotional connection that the Commonwealth has provided through the videos they have introduced as evidence of Karen Read saying, all kinds of things. So they have given the jury emotional connection with those statements. So in order to combat that, I think they should have called Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, Michael Proctor, kept it very concise, just blah, 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 blah. That's it. But I'm not an attorney, and this defense team is stellar. So who am I to doubt anything they did? And we will definitely look at Hank. I'm just trying to postpone it as much as I can. So as Bob says, it's hard to watch him. Should we watch a little bit of him and go back to Alan Jackson? I don't know. I don't think so. You guys tell me what you want to do. But so far, let's go back to Alan Jackson.
And paint his arm blue, which told you exactly nothing. The ARCA testing, conversely, also established that it is impossible for John's sweatshirt sleeve to be damaged by an impact with the taillight. The Commonwealth's theory is that the sleeve of John's hoodie sweatshirt was damaged by flying shards of taillight slicing through the shirt and through John's arm. I have 3 questions. Number 1, John's arm had about 36 abrasions. How did 36 shards of acrylic go through 9 tiny little puncture holes? How'd that happen?
Great
Somebody needs to answer
question.
that.
I never
Number 2,
thought of that.
why are there no slices or cuts in the hoodie? All the defects are punctures. Punctures that you might get from, say, I don't know,
A dog?
canine teeth. And number 3, if the
can't believe
shards
he's allowed to
cut
say
bloody
that.
gouges into John's arm, that's their theory. Why is there no blood, no skin, no tissue on a single shard of taillight that they claim came in contact with John's arm?
Great point.
Commonwealth cannot answer a single one of those questions because John's arm was not impacted by the taillight. It doesn't make sense simply because it didn't happen.
I wish I was there watching.
Compare and
the
contrast the ARCA experts and their actual testing to Judd Welcher. He came to you in the Commonwealth's case in chief, and he told you that for the better part of $500,000, he'd come in and testify that John was tall enough to touch the taillight with his elbow. That's it.
400,000
And even in that basic demonstration,
case.
he had to lean in to manipulate it to get the results that he wanted. Dr. Welcher then claimed that the reason he didn't do the reconstruction, the actual testing, think about what he said. There isn't enough evidence to determine what happened. I beg your pardon?
I need to write that down.
What happens when there isn't enough evidence, in his words? You vote not guilty. That's what happens. That's out of his mouth, not mine. The Commonwealth also used the same company, Aperture, to try to establish a time of a collision
Okay, I'm
that
sorry.
never
What
occurred.
did he say exactly? There isn't enough evidence. What? Do you guys know? Because I don't want to go back.
The Commonwealth called Shannon Burgess, the supposed expert from Aperture. There is a cardinal sin for experts, folks, a cardinal sin. It's called confirmation bias. It's when you decide to change your opinion to fit a theory. The most important takeaway from Shannon Burgess' testimony was how brazen, how shameless he was in trying to change the data to try to suit the Commonwealth. Remember Mr. Brennan's opening statement. He made some promises to you. He said, this case is about the data. He stressed it over and over again. They've had 3.5 years to get this right. The Commonwealth has had this case for 3.5 years to get it right. So his top expert, Dr. Welcher, prepares a report. And that report says that John O'Keefe was struck by Karen Reed's SUV at 12:31:38. Note that time, 12:31:38.
Okay.
He was struck, he was immediately incapacitated, he was immediately unconscious. So says Judd Welcher and the Commonwealth's theory. But there was a huge, huge problem with that. And somewhere in the middle of trial, somebody must have realized it. They must have realized that the very data they produced unequivocally establishes that they are wrong about a collision. It could not have happened. Why? Because John was interacting with his phone after 12:31:38. Remember, the collision immediately incapacitating. How could he be interacting with his phone afterward? He was on his phone, opening his phone, checking his phone, reading texts on his phone, and locking his phone. All of it after 12:31:38, which is the time Welcher clocked for the moment of the impact.
Karina says the worst thing about Burgess, is that how you say his name? Burgess? He's not an expert. I mean, how did it's just like birds of a feather flock together, right? How did the Commonwealth find witnesses that were so unlikable and the prosecutor so unlikable? Or maybe that's just my bias, but I don't think so. And then you look at the defense team and the defense witnesses, they're all like PhDs, they are classy, they're highly educated, they know how to answer without being snippy, arrogant, condescending, and all of the Commonwealth's witnesses during cross-examination showed a high level of combativeness. It's just like a trend. It's a trend. It's weird.
And he was taking steps and walking with that phone after 12:31:38 also.
Up the stairs, right?
That's what their own data showed. And it devastated their case. And it devastated that false theory. There must have been panic, I'm guessing, in the room. What do we do now? The data shows John wasn't struck by the car. What do we do? Enter Shannon Burgess. Question. Can you believe him? Can you believe Mr. Burgess? He came up with a brand new story right in the middle of trial. You might ask yourself, would an expert actually say something he knows not to be true?
He said, I didn't change the report. I supplemented it with a different fact.
You don't have to look any further than Shannon Burgess's CV to answer that question. That was a shame.
Yikes.
Even with the pull and push and stretch and manipulation of the time data that Mr. Burgess came in here and told you about, it still shows that John O'Keefe was very much alive and walking around after they claim he was hit and incapacitated. Think about that.
Well, I would just be like, listen, guys, it's very simple. Our expert is a PhD engineer. Their expert doesn't even have a bachelor degree, and he lied that he did. This is the level, the disparity, like the difference is just night and day. Our experts are better, simply put.
Matt DeSogra looked at Burgess's report and told you that in 30 out of 30 scenarios of the possible time skews that Shannon Burgess identified, he came in the middle of trial and identified all these other time skews that he called it.
Now,
in every single scenario, John was alive and
I'll
walking after they said he was hit. And that's a problem for them because there was no collision. Just look at Mr. Whiffen's data, Ian Whiffen. John O'Keefe took 31 steps at a steady rate, about 83 feet. And then think about this, in a westerly direction. That would be toward the house.
What about the stairs?
Remember, it's 78 feet to that garage door. That's not a coincidence. The Commonwealth's witness, Mr. Ian Whiffen himself conceded that he has reasonable doubts about the accuracy of John's location data. Remember that question and answer on cross-examination by Mr. Leslie. Do you have doubts?
I don't remember exactly, but I believe you.
They are. And remember, it's still the Commonwealth's burden. If their own cell phone expert has a reasonable doubt about John's location, so should you.
So what I was gonna say, and I decided to wait, the people, right? The people around. I'm looking at the reactions, the facial expressions, the natural, how is this affecting them? How is this closing statement hitting them? So we all know that, behind Mr. Wolf here, the guy with the blue, so we have Alan Jackson in the front, you got Mr. Wolf, the guy with the laptop, the blue tie. He works with the defense team, so he's the tech guy. He's the one doing all the displays, all the chalks. showing up on the screen. Behind him are the people who are the family of Mr. John O'Keefe and also his supporters. So the family of John O'Keefe, the victim, has displayed a strong belief that they believe Mrs. Reed is guilty. So they're kind of like they're against her, and everybody's sitting on the right side. On the left, we know that in the front usually is Karen Reed's mom, dad. I don't know who the blonde lady is, the one that is smiling, but she has been showing a lot of like pleasant displays of emotion, like when Alan Jackson is going through the case. Everybody else right now seems to be pretty bored. They seem to be like falling asleep. And I understand the Mr. Wolf would be like, listen, I just need like 8 hours. Just please give me like 8 hours. I haven't slept in 3 years. Please just give me a moment and a Snickers so that I can have some rest. But everybody else is kind of like, not super excited, not super shocked. So let's see how this progresses.
John O'Keefe was inside, and the phone battery temperature further proves it. This is not speculation. This is science, and it's
everybody
irrefutable.
hit the
It tells us that he was not laying outside in the cold.
acknowledge.
He was inside somewhere a little bit warmer. Ian Whiffen told you that when the iPhone is exposed to freezing temperatures, think about these numbers. When the iPhone is exposed to freezing temperatures, it will drop from 81 to 21 degrees in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's a 60-degree drop in 15 minutes. Now look at John's phone. It was laying, according to the Commonwealth, it was laying directly on frozen ground. He arrived at 34 Fairview and his phone dropped only 20 degrees over the course of an hour. Then inexplicably, it stayed steady, never dropping below 50 degrees for the next 4.5 hours, never dropping below 50 degrees for the next 4.5 hours, basically through the entire night. He was not outside. He was someplace warmer, like a basement or a garage.
I am
Dr.
so
Lapasada
surprised that Alan Jackson is allowed to say this. I love it. I love it. He's giving the jury other alternatives. And that is great. I love it. I love it. But yeah, it's more likely that he was in a warmer place. It's more likely that something else happened and it just caused the blunt trauma to the back of the head than this 6,000-pound SUV hitting him and leaving no bruises, no broken bones, nothing. It's simply more likely. And we're not here to prove you any probability, possibility, or even strong probability. They had the opportunity to show you the proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think it's masterful to keep hitting on that.
Confirmed that John O'Keefe did not have hypothermia. No telltale signs, no telltale Wisniewski spots, no frostbite on any extremity. He did not die of hypothermia because he wasn't outside.
Say it with me. Wisniewski's.
Dr. Isaac Wolf, Dan Wolf, Elizabeth Lapasada, Judson Welcher, Andrew Rinchler, all agreed. Every expert agreed.
Cheers. Carrot
This
juice
is how John O'Keefe died.
with orange,
A rearward fall
turmeric,
from standing
ginger, lime, oranges. I said that. Okay, this is Dr. Welcher.
What can make you
Who
fall
is
straight
this?
back like
Dr.
that?
Welcher?
Let's just think about that for a second.
Every
What can make you fall
expert
from the standing
agreed.
position as Judd Welcher just showed us? Standing up, falling straight back. Add a laceration to the right eye consistent with a fist or a punch. And that's your answer.
Modine says, verdict watch.
He certainly
Place
didn't
your
sustain that
bet.
wound on the back of his head by falling backwards onto a lawn. Dr. Lapasada told you that the patterned injury on the back of John's head could only be produced by hitting a hard, ridged, or ledged surface,
Like a heavy
a concrete
weight.
stair or step.
Yeah.
What's just through that garage door? Michael Proctor never stepped down in that garage to find out. What a shame.
What a shame.
And look at the arm. Just look at John's arm. You don't need the top experts in the country, but you had them. You don't need the top medical minds on the planet on this issue, but you had them.
They're going to show
These
the
are dog
arm.
bites and scratches. These are animal wounds. Not one witness has been called in their trial. Not one. 8 weeks and counting. Not one witness who actually disputes that John O'Keefe's arm injuries are from a dog.
Great
The Commonwealth
point.
could not find a single medical expert, a single medical witness who would come in here and tell you those are inconsistent with a dog bite or a scratch. And it's equally clear that there was no collision. Dr. Lapasada told you in probably the clearest voice in the entire trial. You remember her testimony. He didn't get hit by a car, in her words. He just didn't get hit by a car. You remember the question that was posed by Mr. Brennan, did you consider the speed of the vehicle? And she said, speed didn't matter because he didn't get hit by a car. She repeated it 3 times because it's true, not just because she says so, but because the medical evidence proves it. The medical science proves it. There was no collision. Dr. Rinchler told you unequivocally and just as firmly he didn't get hit by a car. The Commonwealth has not met their burden. They cannot meet their burden. The Commonwealth hasn't called a single medical professional, not one, to testify that John's wounds came from being hit by a car. Not Dr. Scorti Bello, not Dr. Isaac Wolf. Contrast that with the caliber and the quality of the experts who came in here to tell you what is obvious to anyone with common sense. Those wounds on his right arm are from a dog. This was not an oversight by the Commonwealth. It's just that there is no one out there, no matter how big a check you write. It's not a medical expert who's going to disagree with that.
Wow. I love it. No matter how big the check, you're right. Who is she looking at? The blonde lady here. She was looking at Alan, and all of a sudden she went to with the side eye, you know, the side eye action. Like, she's looking at somebody in the family. Maybe, maybe, maybe. So I just wanted to pause here real quick because we haven't really been seeing in this footage Karen Read's parents. So here they are. You have his mom, oh wow, I can't speak anymore because I've been talking since 4 a.m. We have her dad and her mother on the screen. So it's just a reminder, guys, that today is supposed to be a positive day, a day of hope, a day of good vibes. So we all have all this energy, all these positive emotions inside of us. Sometimes it is blocked by stress, by anxiety, by worry, and it is actually physiological as well as emotional, as well as spiritual. Sometimes stress, trauma, pain, worry can get stuck in our bodies. Like we'll literally feel stiff shoulders, stiff neck, lower back pain, all of that stuff. So when you do breathing, you know, when you just, some people don't breathe like deep breathing at all. Like throughout the day, they just go, fight or flight mode. Now, breathing is just taking a moment, inhaling through the nose, letting the air go through your throat, go down through your diaphragm, all the way to the bottom of your stomach. Hold it there and then relax. Exhale. And when you're doing this, you can literally think of Karen, of her parents, and just send them some positive vibes. So you inhale, thinking of inhaling peace, inhaling hope, inhaling courage and strength, hold, and exhale all worry. So this is a mindful exercise. Meditation does not have to be done with your eyes closed. It does not have to be done for long periods of time. As long as you have an intention and you just focus on one thing, the present moment. Okay? Because the toll that these people have been enduring, you know, the father, and they have been present at either every single proceeding or almost every single proceeding. And we just want to send them so much positive vibes today. And I know they receive from the people that are there. You know, I know the Young Jerks are there today. I know that there are a lot of supporters, the people that are supporting Karen Read and her family there. So we know they're receiving a lot of positive vibes. But if that's the small part we can play, that's fine too. So let me see. Modine saying, stress is my friend. I perform the best with stress and it always occupies my life. Cheers to my stress friend. Oh, stress can be great. For example, when you are exercising at the gym, right? That is producing a stress on your body. You are going into fight and flight mode. You're going to activate your limbic system, you know, for that cortisol, for all of that to start happening to your body. And also when you're working hard and you're just like focusing on the productivity, there is nothing wrong with stressing your body. But when you overstress, over worry, and you have cortisol being produced all the time, the stress hormone, and it's not being released in a healthy manner, that could cause some issues for our health. Mo said I meditated once, fell asleep, they threw me out of class. Try doing it on your own, Mo, here with us, you know, just for a minute, 30 seconds and stuff. And I'm sure that you will be fine. Everybody can meditate. Everybody, because everybody breathes and everybody can focus on the present moment. That is the definition of mindfulness. And then there's other ways that you can meditate and learn so much from it. So again, looking at the people here, you know, there's two ladies, and at the end, the one with the pink shirt, she's just like crossing her arms. I don't know. She just seemed bored, and now I don't know what she seems like because I have no idea what her baseline is. And then this other lady next to her with the black hair, she just looks like, I don't know. She's not confused. Her facial expression is kind of like, I can't think of it right now. If you guys can think of something, please let me know. But kind of like, I know it in Portuguese right now, not believing, something like that. And then I don't know who she's looking at, but I wish I knew. I want to know all the tea. So let's go, Ellen Jackson. Give us all the tea.
The fact is, this is the central fact in the case. The only fact that matters is literally uncontested by every medical expert. Uncontested, undisputed. There is no evidence that John was hit by a car. None. How much more reasonable doubt could there be?
Love it.
This case should be over right now. Done.
But the judge is corrupt,
there
so
was
it's not.
No collision.
Could he say that? We asked the judge to actually dismiss all the charges, but guess what? She's been ruling against us from day one. She has shown you guys her extreme bias. So that's another reason for you guys to understand there's corruption all over this case. You've seen it. You've heard the objections. You've heard I'll allow it. You've heard overruled. No, you haven't heard overruled. You've heard sustained all the time towards the defense. You've heard Brennan come here and attack our witnesses in a personal level, and the judge just allowed it and allowed it. He lied and she allowed it. You've seen it, jury. So it is you. It is on you. You are the last line of defense to stop this corruption. I guess he's not allowed to say that.
So given all that, how did Karen Reed end up sitting here? Why is she even here?
Why
is she
are
in that
we
chair? Why is she
here?
in this courtroom? There is a reason for that.
We've been here
And it's a
for
reason
2
they don't want to tell
years
you.
now.
It's the reality they don't want to admit to. The reason we're here is because the system, the very system that was meant to protect her, that was meant to protect all of us, that system has failed
I
badly.
like her facial expression.
So now let's discuss the facts that were
It
and were
shows
not
pain,
presented
it
by the
shows
Commonwealth
hurt.
in this case. Over the next few minutes, I want to talk about the utter
That is I'm sorry, Karen.
failure of the
That was a bad pause. It shows pain. It shows hurt. It shows indignation, injustice. And I think that's a much better demeanor for her, especially today when the jury is definitely looking at her, than when she sometimes seems to be overly confident and laughing and showing papers to the attorneys. Maybe that doesn't fall well with everybody. It shouldn't be that way, right? People shouldn't be judging people for their demeanor, even though we're a body language channel here. But hey, more about that later, but she's expressing a very appropriate facial demeanor and emotion here. Very real.
the police to investigate this properly and to investigate this fully. And what you're going to see is that Michael Proctor, the lead investigator for the Commonwealth, did nothing to actually and properly investigate this case. Let's start with the House. That's the most logical place to start. I think you'd agree.
I
Brian?
think Mr. O'Keefe's dad behind Mr. Wolf here has been sleeping this entire time. I literally think he's been just like snoozing.
Albert's house, where John's body was discovered lifeless in the lawn. A man, a police officer, is found dead on the front lawn, and no one secures the scene. No tape, no preservation of evidence, no crime scene log, no search warrants, no consent searches.
So the girl with the pink shirt, when he said a body was found on the lawn, she like raised her eyebrows. I don't know. She's not giving me much. Is she with the defense? Is she like part of the family? Like, she's not giving me much. I need better emotion. I need better emotions from you. I need you to like support Karen Reed with better facial expressions, because you're sitting in the front row. I mean, the jury is looking right at you. So can you please like uncross your arms and be like the lady next to you, the blonde lady, and be like, yeah, that's right. And it was found there. Yes. And the indignation. Give me some more. I mean, come on. I could have gone to court and given them a better demeanor, better expressions reacting to Mr. Alan Jackson here than this. I mean, did you guys not eat any breakfast? You need some water. What is going on?
No photographs of the house interior. They didn't treat the house as a crime scene. And shamefully, they didn't even treat the yard as a crime scene. The lame excuse offered by retired Lieutenant Gallagher. It was really cold and windy.
He's
But I
absolutely
didn't know if
not.
there was a crime that had been committed.
Gallagher.
What? You didn't know that a crime had potentially been committed? You have a man laying dead in
Did
the
you
yard,
get video
and here are the
surveillance?
undisputed
Wait.
facts that those officers were.
Did you get video surveillance, Officer Gallagher? Absolutely not. I knew what the video was going to show. Did you interrogate Brian Albert, Mr. Gallagher? Absolutely not. Did you ask for a warrant, Mr. Gallagher? Absolutely not. What a tool. What a tool.
Confronted with. Black eyes. Obviously, black eyes are consistent with a fight. Bloody nose, also consistent with a fight. Bleeding from the face, consistent with a physical altercation. A cut over the right eye, consistent with a punch. No coat in the freezing cold, not dressed for outside, dressed for inside. And one shoe on. I wonder where the other shoe could be. I don't know, maybe in the house 30 feet away. And then you find a broken and shattered drinking glass next to him, the type of glass that you might find, I don't know, let me think about this, in a kitchen, in a house, 30 feet away.
Yes, I love
John's
the
phone was tucked neatly
emphasis.
under his back shoulder. Lieutenant Gallagher actually claimed he did not know it was a potential crime that needed investigating.
Okay.
The neighbor across the street, Detective Lieutenant Kelleher, had a ring camera that was pointed at the exact direction.
It was an
where John
Arlo,
O'Keefe
I believe.
would have been hit.
Don't say ring.
Nobody bothered to secure it. Nobody bothered to secure it. Nobody even bothered to look at it. Of course, this was a potential crime scene. Of course it was. Let's not forget, this was Brian Albert's house, and that comes with privileges. Quote, is the homeowner going to catch any shit? Nope. He's a Boston cop too, end quote. That quote starts to make a little more sense now, doesn't it? Michael Proctor wrote those words just hours after John's body was found. He sent this in a private chat, in a private text he never, ever believed would ever be revealed. He sent that text in a series of messages that now belong to you. You weren't given the opportunity to hear from Michael Proctor, but you can read his thoughts for yourself. And I urge you, go read them. They're in
209.
Exhibit 209.
209.
In case you're wondering. But here are the highlights. Proctor starts the conversation.
I think at this time he should have put the text messages on display. That's what I did for my closing arguments that you can check out later. One of them, the one with the regular speed that is like almost an hour long, is going to be released tonight at 10 p.m. And then the other one is already uploaded, the one that I uploaded today earlier. And it was like a 2x speed closing argument. So if you have the patience and your brain can process that, I would suggest listening to that one. I actually prefer my voice in the 2x speed for some reason. I don't know. Modine says, I think that the jury room is going to be tight with making a decision. Hold on to your wigs. Yeah, I mean, they probably want to go over the case. They probably want to talk over the case. I don't know how it is. I don't know if somebody goes in there, every jury is different. Every jury deliberation is different. Maybe somebody goes in there and says, hey, does everybody here have an opinion? Let's everybody raise their hands for not guilty. And then if not everybody is unanimous, then we can talk about the case. We'll go over each count and start talking from then, or we can just start talking, charge by charge, count by count. When I did my mock closing statement, I also put on the display each count and the questions they had to ask themselves and all of the answers they had to answer yes to in order to move on with the count or not. But okay, let's keep going.
Quote, all the powers that be
Proctor
want
text
answers ASAP.
messages.
He's getting pressure, obviously. Get this done. His friend then asks what Proctor's probably thinking at the time. Quote, I assume you guys are out to make it cut and dry since it involves cops. Something stinks. And Proctor responds, yeah, to the something stinks. And then he goes on, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. Think about that. Hours into this investigation, there will be some serious charges brought on the girl. She's a whack job cunt. Yeah, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though. No ass bitch. She's got a leaky balloon knot, leaks poo, 0 chance she skates. She's fucked. And up to this point, Michael Proctor had done 0 investigation. Nothing.
He's going to
Save
wake up
talk
the
to
girl
a
in
grand
pink.
total of 3 people, all of whom were named Albert or McCabe.
Guys, from
That's it.
Karina.
And this was his mindset.
Everybody needs a Karina in
This
their
is the
life.
same lead investigator who sent the group chats that you heard about with Sergeant Bupnik. Late night,
Buchanan.
sitting in his office, rifling through Karen's phone, bragging about looking for naked pictures of her. That text wasn't sent to his buddies or his friends. That text was sent to his supervisors at the Massachusetts State Police, for God's sake. And what was their response? Sergeant Buchanan liked this conduct with a big old thumbs up.
Acknowledged it. He acknowledged it.
Ladies and gentlemen, a lead investigator every investigator is supposed to be objective, an objective fact finder. No bias, no agenda. Michael Proctor went far beyond just insulting Karen Reed. He dehumanized this woman. He betrayed her as a human being. He was fired for this blatant bias. If the Massachusetts State Police can't trust him, how can you trust him with this investigation and with your verdict
Great point.
and with Karen Reed's life?
Nice.
The lead investigator in a murder trial was never called to testify. Think about that. That should stop you in your tracks. Wouldn't you want to hear from Michael Proctor? Wouldn't you want to hear from the lead investigator in the case?
Yes, I
Don't you have
did.
questions?
I did. I wanted
The
to
Commonwealth
hear
did not present their own lead investigator to the jury, the very jury who was charged with judging the investigation. Michael Proctor clearly is radioactive, and the Commonwealth stayed away from it. Michael Proctor is no longer a Massachusetts State Police officer. He wasn't transferred. He didn't go on sabbatical. He didn't retire. He didn't resign.
He didn't
He
die.
was fired. He was terminated
didn't
for
die.
cause. The Massachusetts State Police investigated him, found him guilty of dishonorable conduct, not just for those text messages, folks, for sharing confidential information with witnesses and for bias. Not just any bias, bias in this case. Fired. This is the man who touched every single piece of important evidence in this case. All the evidence that was brought before you in this trial went through his hands one way or another. The shirts, the shards. Remember that when Mr. Brennan gets up and gives his closing argument. The shirts, the shards, all in Michael Proctor's possession. Mr. Brennan and the Commonwealth, I think, have pinned their hopes on some microscopic pieces of, or close to microscopic pieces of plastic that were claimed to have been scraped from the hoodie several months after the fact. What he failed to ask every single witness is who had access to that shirt and who had access to those taillight fragments. And the answer is it was Michael Proctor. Not for days, not for weeks, for months on end, for months unaccounted for, before they were submitted to the crime lab, before they were ever scraped. Just go look at the chain of custody documents. You've got them. Why didn't Michael Proctor give those clothes to Maureen Hartnett with the crime lab when she was at Canton PD just days after the fact to receive?
Because he was
solo
sniffing
cups?
the
Remember that?
clothes
A
for
few days
like
later. She
months.
was there. She drove up. She did the driving to take the solo cups in the grocery bag, which has a ridiculous aspect to it in and of itself as well. Why not just give her the shirts as well? Give her the taillight fragments if any were found at that point. Why hold on to them? What could possibly be a reason? Why wait until March to book those into evidence?
I love that he's allowed to
Now let's
say
talk about some of the
that.
other problems with the Commonwealth's evidence. As I indicated, there was no blood, no skin, no tissue, no DNA found on a single piece or shard of the taillight that the Commonwealth claims cut and sliced into John O'Keefe's arm. Where is that trace evidence? Where is that biological evidence? The DNA. Where is it? They got nothing. Not a single piece that the Commonwealth wants you to believe cut up John's arm. How is that possible? It's not possible. The only way it's possible is if those shards never touched his arm. Because it was a dog.
Because he was a dog.
Oh, and the one sample of DNA that they did find, by the way, was found on the outer smooth part of the housing. Not any shard. It was the outer smooth part of the housing. Nothing that they claim actually came in contact with John O'Keefe. Number two, that sample had DNA of two other men, two other unidentified males.
Right.
That tells you that that DNA had nothing to do with a car strike. That DNA would be expected to be, John's DNA would be expected to be all over that car. Inside, outside, he had access to that car for months and months and months. He was in and out of it all the time. Show me some blood, then we'll talk. They can't, and they won't because it doesn't exist. That SUV never hit John. The hair found on the bumper. The Commonwealth really stretched its own credibility on this one. That magic little hair on the SUV supposedly survived a 37-mile drive in 47-mile-an-hour winds. But that little magic hair just clung there, just hung on. That same hair that moved in between photos in the Sally Port. Remember that? There were two photos taken, and it was either the breath of the photographer or just the movement of walking by the hair. It literally moved between the two photographs. But that hair is supposed to have hung on in a 37-mile drive in a blizzard. The only thing that hair proves that the Commonwealth is embarrassingly grasping at straws. That hair has nothing to do with anything. But it doesn't stop there. There was another revelation at trial, a big one, a huge one, and it came from a very unlikely source. Christina Hanley, a quiet, reserved criminalist who told you something the Commonwealth likely did not want revealed because it's devastating to their case. Absolutely devastating. And it's this. The glass on the bumper didn't match the cocktail glass. None of it. Remember, February 11th, Michael Proctor, without any other person with him, no witness, no supervisor, no other person with him, claims to have found a single piece of glass at the scene. February 11th, single piece of glass, Michael Proctor. Keep that in mind. Interestingly, the glass on the bumper that didn't match the cocktail glass, one piece did match one other thing, the Proctor glass. Those two go together.
The Proctor glass.
The only two things that go together from that bumper are the Proctor glass.
And he
There
did
was-
have
we know
a
that there's no
great
glass on it.
demonstration. He did have a great demonstration showing that visually, which I think is very important for the jury to have visuals. Not everybody learns the same way. Some people are more learning. They learn more auditorily. Some people like to see things. Some people I like to take notes. Even if I'm never going to read them again, I like to journal, and it just helps me to retain information better.
In the taillight, we know that nothing else was shattered on the vehicle. Therefore, that glass had to be placed there. Didn't come from
Let
a
me
crash.
see how much
Didn't come
longer
from
he
a cocktail
has.
glass. So how did it get sprinkled on the back of the bumper?
Wow.
Whose proverbial fingerprints are on that glass on the bumper? The only thing it matched was Michael Proctor. What about the Ford Edge and that snowplow driver, Brian Loughran? He observed that Ford Edge parked outside Brian Albert's house at 3:30 a.m.
Oh,
That
Brian.
vehicle was moved directly in front of where John's body was found sometime between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning. The only person connected to a car of that make and model, Brian Albert. Michael Proctor did nothing to investigate that point. did nothing to investigate whose Ford Edge was parked in a spot specifically to
Hi,
block
Queen
the line of
Olive.
sight
Good
in the exact
afternoon.
position where John's
Happy
body
Friday
would be
the
later found by
13th.
Karen Reed. No one,
Free
not
Karen
Michael
Reed
Proctor or anybody
today.
else, checked it
Free
for evidence.
Karen
No one even
Reed.
asked any questions about it. That Ford Edge, Brian Albert's Ford Edge, completely ignored. Michael Proctor failed to interview obvious witnesses in this case. Why? Why didn't he want to speak to the snowplow driver, Brian Loughran?
And Mo,
Why did he
I'm going
falsely
to
claim that no one
respond
plowed the
to
roadway
you
that
soon,
morning?
okay? I had
When
to
police
start
dash
it.
cam video, you saw the dash cam, it shows plows going back and forth all morning. Why did he wait so long, years even, to interview Heather Maxson and Ryan Nagel, individuals who were literally outside 34 Fairview at the exact same time John and Karen arrived at Brian Albert's house that night? Brian Loughran, had he been investigated or interviewed, would have told Michael Proctor that he drove past the lawn multiple times on January 29th, and there was no body on the lawn. He would have had a perfect view. Remember, the weatherman told you there was only enough snow at that time. I think he said, in a very charming phrase, only enough snow to track a cat. I think that was it. There was no body there. Heather Maxson and Ryan Nagel would have told him that they arrived at 34 Fairview shortly after Karen and John pulled up behind them, and they would have told Michael Proctor, at least Heather would have told Michael Proctor, that when she left 10 minutes later, she drove past the SUV and observed Karen Reed in the driver's side, dome light on, passenger seat empty. So where was John? Wasn't outside, wasn't sitting down, wasn't laying down. There's only one place he could be. We could all say it together if you could talk with me.
In the house?
He's in the house.
And they took 1 year and 8 months to question Dentano that was driving the truck that was parked behind the SUV, where Karen Reed was in, and nobody else was in the SUV. So where was he? Where was he? In the house. Again, Mr. Keefe's dad seems to be sleeping. Mr. Wolf seems to be sleeping, but maybe he's just looking down at the computer. This guy behind Mr. Wolf is like, can I please be anywhere else? I don't want to be here right now. The lady in the front, right next to Carrie's mom, the blonde lady, seems very pleased with the closing arguments. And these two other ladies, I don't know who they are. Please forgive me for my observations, but you guys could have shown a little bit more enthusiasm during this closing argument with your faces. With your faces.
But Michael Proctor did not want to have those answers. He did not want to have to disclose those answers. He didn't want the truth. The Commonwealth has presented a shred of evidence of when Karen Reed consumed her last drink that night. Think about that. It's critical information that the Commonwealth has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. They have to prove when her last drink was that night. They have to prove it. We don't have to prove or disprove anything.
Right.
Every single witness who was asked and who had an opportunity to observe Karen that night said the same thing. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't stumbling. She wasn't slurring her words. She was, in the
Still,
words
Karina,
of
they're in
Ms.
the
Colquitas,
front row,
completely normal.
you
Even
know?
Jennifer McCabe grudgingly had to admit that fact. It's on video. Instead, they used Yuri Buchanan to try to come into court and count sips of alcohol, which he admittedly got wrong. According to Ian Whiffen,
He
Commonwealth phone
sucks.
expert, the location data,
Super
using location
Buchanan,
data on John's
not a
phone,
good witness
showed Karen
either.
driving lawfully. She was driving safely. She was under the speed limit. She was slowing and stopping at stop signs, slowing around corners. And Ryan Nagel corroborated that when he saw her make that left-hand turn onto Fairview. The Commonwealth has an incredibly high burden to prove that Karen was driving under the influence. They have failed to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt.
I'm going
and
to try to
moral
make this
certainty
a little
because it depends on
faster.
when she
It
had
might be
her
too
last
fast.
drink.
Let's
What
try.
happened after she got home and she was upset with John for not coming back out of the house?
I like it. I like
That would
it.
answer that question. As you well know, no one searched the house for signs of a struggle. Not that night, not the next day. I'm talking about 34 Fairview. Not ever, not once. Not with a warrant, not with consent. They never went to the basement, the stairwells. They didn't look at the walls. They didn't look in the garage. Nothing was ever examined. Nothing was checked for blood. Nothing was checked for DNA. They didn't look for alleged or ridged surface. Zero. You'll remember how surprised Jennifer McCabe was to recall that there was a garage door even on the house. Except this was her sister's house. She's been going to that house since she was 5. She's seen that house. She's been in and out of that house hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times. She's been going to that house her entire life, and yet she acted
Is this too
surprised
fast
when I asked
for
her
you
about it. Remember
guys?
Jennifer McCabe's answer when I asked her whether there was a door at the garage?
I
asked her
can
about the front
listen to
door,
this
side
at
door,
3 times
and the garage
speed,
door. And
so
her
let
answer
me
was,
know.
oh,
This is
actually, there is a garage
1.75.
door right there. Investigators never opened that door.
Right. There's a garage door right there.
Let's change the scenario. What if it wasn't the house of a Boston cop? What if it wasn't the house of Brian Albert? We can be certain that investigators would have torn that house apart to get answers about why a fellow police officer was laying dead on the homeowner's lawn.
I would have liked him to say, now imagine if it was one of your houses and a police officer was found dead in the front lawn. Do you believe that you would have received the same treatment? I would have liked that better.
You betcha.
But I still love you so much, Alan Jackson.
Because
You
this was
are
Brian
the
Albert's
king.
house, a Boston cop. Nope. And because he was a fellow cop, an insider, they didn't even open the door. That is not justice, folks. That's just pure favoritism.
Right.
Each of these
Mo.
facts is more than a question mark. They're failures of
Seriously.
duty. They're blank spots on a
Show
map
some,
where justice is supposed
some
to live.
life.
And every single one is a reason why you cannot convict Karen Reed. Reasonable doubt abounds.
I
If the
could've
Commonwealth
brought
failed to
them some
investigate every
carrot-
reasonable
carrot
alternative,
juice.
how dare they come in here and ask you for a verdict? They didn't investigate the case fully, and yet they're asking you to take the easy road and do their job for them. These facts do not represent reasonable doubt. Nothing does. Every one of these facts that you're seeing that we're talking about represents reasonable doubt. Everyone. The police and the prosecution are in a position to take people's liberty. It's the most dire and consequential act a civilized government can take against one of its citizens. Their obligation is not just to try to get it right. They have to convince you to the highest degree of certainty known in human affairs. They have to do it all, every bit of it, beyond any and all reasonable doubt. And they have not done that here.
Not beyond
And how about the homeowner
all
himself?
reasonable doubt.
The host, the first responder, the Boston cop, Brian Albert, who was sparring and practice fighting with Brian Higgins just minutes before John O'Keefe appeared at his house, 34 Fairview. Brian Albert, who was watching Chloe that night, the German Shepherd. Brian Albert, whose phone and his wife's phone were never secured. Brian Albert, who never came out of the house. But that doesn't mean he wasn't awake. It doesn't mean that he wasn't on his phone. Think about this. Jennifer McCabe claimed that her sister and Brian Albert both slept through this complete chaos right outside their bedroom window.
It's just surprising that everybody's like so tired. The people behind Mr. Wolf are like, they're like, we're sleeping, and that's it. And yeah, they need like a boost or something. And this is like the first thing that happened this morning. So I don't understand why they're already so tired. Imagine when Hank came in. I want to see the difference when Hank was talking, because he is very painful to listen to.
But Jennifer McCabe's phone records tell a different story, and they tell the truth. She spoke with him for the better part of a minute, 38 seconds to be detailed about it, at 5:07 a.m. And then she lied about that call. Remember that? What was the reason for that call?
Right, you
At
have to
5:07?
show some support
panic?
with your body language,
Was it
with your
warning?
demeanor.
We know that
Like,
conversation took place at the
right.
precise time Karen left her house to go search for John, 5:07. We could answer those questions if we just had access to their phones. Brian Albert, Brian Higgins. Michael Proctor wasn't interested in their phones. Not only did he not secure their phones, he never even asked.
Right.
And what about Brian Albert's dog, Chloe? A dog with a history. A dog that is, quote, not good with strangers.
Wait, there
Dr.
was
Russell
a dog
confirmed that
in the
John's pattern
house?
injuries were from a dog, just like the dog Brian Albert owned. And then Chloe just disappeared.
Poof.
Not there the next morning. None of the officers that you heard from said that there was a dog in the house. They didn't see her. She's just gone.
Rehomed.
And then ultimately gotten rid of altogether. Who gets rid of their family pet?
Who gets rid of? Okay,
Unless they have something
wait,
to hide.
wait. Who gets rid of their family pets? Who gets rid of their family pets? I mean, I understand. Sometimes people get older. Sometimes people get sick. They can no longer take care of the baby pet. But when you take in a pet, it's now part of your family. You can't just get rid of it. You can't. Don't take the pet. If you are capable of getting rid of it, don't take the pet. Unless maybe your pet murdered somebody and then you had to get rid of the pet. But don't get rid of the pets. Don't take the pets. Just don't do it. Where's Alan? Where's Alan?
Michael Proctor wasn't interested in that either. And recall the group chat with the Alberts and the McCabes. They were getting their story straight. Matt McCabe, whom the Commonwealth did not call in this trial, instructed the group in that group chat, you'll recall, tell him to say the guy never came in the house. Think about that exact quote. Tell him to say the guy never came in the house. And Brian Albert, the patriarch of the family, exactly, exclamation point.
I don't
Bless it.
remember this coming in
It's the
this
truth.
trial.
As we all
but
know, you
good.
don't need to get your story straight. You don't need to tell someone what to say. It's just the truth. And what about the Google search? A Google search that Jennifer McCabe admitted having made.
Pause.
A Google search that was timestamped by Celebrite at 2:27 a.m. A Google search that read, Huss-Long to die in cold. It is uncontested and undisputed that that search was deleted. If the 2:27 a.m. timestamp is not true, why does Jennifer McCabe have to lie about it? Why delete it? If the 2:27 a.m. timestamp is not true, why create a false story about Karen screaming Google hypothermia? That's just a fabrication. That's just a made-up
Then
fact.
Google
And by the way,
hypothermia.
if someone does tell you Google hypothermia, why would you Google how long it takes to die in cold? Wouldn't you just Google hypothermia? Jennifer McCabe enlisted Kerry Roberts
Not
to help
here.
shift the blame to Karen.
Absolutely not.
Why go to that much effort?
And why
Unless you're trying
change
to
a
cover something.
7-year-old dog's name? Right.
Keep in mind the entire
just mean.
foundation, the entire foundation of her claim that Karen said Google hypothermia is this fantasy about Karen screaming it at the location, at the scene. That's her entire excuse. But that story went completely off the rails when Kerry Roberts admitted that she perjured herself to back up Jennifer McCabe's false story. That was a dramatic moment in court. It's an admission
I
of
am
perjury, and you don't see that very often in a
surprised
courtroom.
Alan Jackson gets
It tells you everything you need to
say
know about the character
that.
and quality of the prosecution's case and their witnesses, lying and perjury and admitting to it.
Dang.
A fundamental tenet of any investigation is to ensure that witnesses are independent and not influenced by other witnesses. You start by separating the witnesses. Michael Proctor did none of that in this case, and we see the results. Think back to Jennifer McCabe's own text messages with Kerry Roberts. About Kerry Roberts, not with Kerry Roberts.
Right.
What
With
Kerry
the
Roberts didn't
group
know
text.
was at the time she was being interviewed by the police, Jennifer McCabe was in real time. She was bragging about having influenced Kerry's testimony or her statements to the Alberts and the McCabes. Quote, she's telling them everything, all the stuff.
From the
Remember that
timeline.
that we talked about with Jennifer McCabe?
Yeah.
That's what she was referring to. She's telling them everything that Jennifer McCabe had put in Kerry Roberts' timeline. The Commonwealth wants you to believe that Karen Read made a statement at the location at the scene. I hit him. I'm sure you'll hear that from the prosecution in their final arguments.
Well, we heard it from her.
But their own witnesses
kind
contradict
of.
that. Jennifer McCabe admitted on cross-examination that her very first statement to law enforcement, confirmed that Karen didn't say anything. She asked, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Is he dead? The physics and the science answer that question. Could you have hit him? No, you couldn't have. Sergeant Buchanan also testified that the only statements Kieran Reed made at the scene, according to his conversations with the first responders, was, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? It wasn't a confession. It was confusion. And Dr. Russell explained that confusion. She told you why Karen Reed or anybody in that position might ask those questions. She was suffering from extreme grief reaction, which according to the evidence can last for years. Even her medical records confirm that diagnosis. It's common to ask those questions in grief. It's common to ask those types of questions in shock. You're trying to make sense of the nonsensical in the moment. And the Commonwealth has tried to twist those words into a confession. There is no evidence that any officer at the scene ever heard Karen Reed say, I hit him.
And then another thing I pointed out when I was doing my mock closing statement was that if you think about a real crime or someone who actually had an intent to murder someone, right? She's being accused of causing his death with intent. Would they be saying the next day, could I have done it? That's just not, it just doesn't make sense. It makes more sense that she was trying to make sense of what was happening. It was like, could I have hit him? Did I clip him? Did I do it? Did he get hit by a plow? She was like brainstorming because she was under an impossible situation and she was trying to figure out what happened. And another thing that I emphasized during this portion of the closing argument was that the Commonwealth took those videos that she used to release her stress. She used to finally speak up after being confined for years in this case, being unable to speak. She decided to speak and to tell her side of the story, doing these interviews. And the Commonwealth is heavily relying on these clips, taking out of context, and these clips that they played here. If she hadn't done the interview, what would their case be then? What would their case be? Because they're relying on her statements so heavily. And they're supposed to be proving to you how a car caused his death. So I would just expand a little bit more because I think one of the strongest, I've talked about this before, emotional connection to the evidence, to the facts. One of the stronger pieces of evidence the Commonwealth has against her are her own statements. It doesn't look good, no matter how you slice it, no matter how you want to say it, no matter, how many times you say it's out of context. When somebody watches her on video saying, I was wondering, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Did I clip him on the knee? Any of those sentences produce a negative reaction in the jury. They look at that and they're like, what the hell? The own defendant is asking herself if she did it. So yeah, so Mo is saying here, that's why you should never talk. Anything can and will be used against you in a court of law. Sometimes I come to the stream wearing my Bruce Rivers hat. Stop self-snitching, right? We hear all the time. And we all think that we would never talk. We all think that we would be like, oh, something happened, I'll just be quiet for 3 years. But we don't know how we would act in such a stressful situation. Tell them to kick rocks. So I'll take this opportunity to also go over your comments from earlier. Mo is saying, Bianca, what is your estimate on a guilty verdict, regardless of the count? 20%, 30%, 50%. So I think it would be unfair for me to respond right now because I haven't heard the annoying voice of Brennan giving his closing argument. So I would have to listen to the prosecutor in order to give you a real response. But if I had to give you, if you're twisting my arm, and if I had to give you a response at this point without listening to Hank, I would give you a 20% guilty, even less. But these are my options. So if you guys have a response for Mo in the chat, please make sure that you reply to his question as well, because it's always good to have your feedback. Ask Bob says, without Karen talking, the verdict would already be in and innocent. Thank you. I do believe mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. Everybody makes mistakes. And I think that allowing her to talk was a big mistake from the defense. However, it was pointed out to me by some of you wonderful people in the chat that it was great publicity for her, that she gained a lot of supporters and financial help through those interviews. So I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. All I have is an opinion, and everybody has an opinion. So what I say here is not a fact. We're just talking, having fun, making a little bit making light of such a difficult situation. Mo says, "Oh, I thought you had heard us. Tell us later. Thank you." I am going to ask Bob to say, Bianca, rather than listening to Brennan, get a root canal. It's less painful. I think I have to, guys, especially because we're going to have to wait until Monday. So I'm probably going to create a live for tomorrow evening. And you guys are all invited to come here and listen to Brennan with me. Help me. Help me help you, because I cannot do that alone. I cannot listen to Brennan alone. I need you guys to talk to me. I need you guys to distract me, because otherwise I don't think I could handle it. I don't think I could handle. So let's keep going. We're almost there. Come on, Alan. Talk to us.
Not a single police officer at the scene came in to support the Commonwealth's claim. It's not on video. It's not on audio. It's not in a single police report. It's not in a single EMT or EMS report. Nowhere. The fact is, Karen never said, "I hit him." You saw the video. Multiple officers were right there. She simply never said it. What did Jennifer McCabe do and not do when she got to 34 Fairview? She would have you believe, I want to set the scene for you, that she's confronted out of the blue with John O'Keefe's lifeless body. Her friend, John O'Keefe. He's bruised and battered. He's bleeding. His eyelid is cut. His nose is bleeding. Karen is screaming at the top of her lungs. Carrie is screaming back to Karen, "Shut up!" Both women begin crying. Both women are giving CPR. There's chaos everywhere. It's building in the yard, just feet from Brian Albert's house, Brian Albert's window. Jennifer calls her sister at 6:07 with all this chaos going on. No answer. Jennifer calls her sister at 6:08 with all this chaos and bedlam going on. Still no answer. No lights come on in the house. In the midst of all this screaming and this chaos, Brian Albert doesn't come outside. Nicole Albert doesn't come outside during this maelstrom. And yet, Jennifer McCabe never goes inside to check on her sister. There's literally no signs of life inside the house. And Jennifer McCabe doesn't take a step inside that house to check on her family. Why is that? Does that make any sense? Everyone would sprint inside the house to make sure that there's no one in there that was hurt or injured or, God forbid, dead. Everyone would do that. But not Jennifer McCabe. The only way that makes sense is if Jennifer McCabe already knew that Brian and Nicole were just fine. That's the only reasonable explanation. And the only way she would know that they were fine is if she knew what happened. But Michael Proctor never explored this incredibly suspicious behavior. Don't you have questions? This would give anyone reasonable doubt. And don't you have questions also about Brian Higgins?
Yes, I have a lot of questions about
Higgins had been
Brian
sending flirtatious
Higgins.
and romantic texts to John's girlfriend, Karen Reed. You'll remember I asked Sergeant Buchanan a simple question. Were those texts flirtatious in nature? He refused to answer that simple question. Do you remember that? Quote, "I'm not comfortable putting a label on that," end quote. We read the texts. It's not a secret. Of course they were flirtatious. Of course they were romantic in nature. The reason he refused to answer that simple question is telling. It's because these flirtatious texts established a motive for Brian Higgins. Sergeant Buchanan could not bring himself to tell the truth. His bias was on full display. He was covering for another cop. Investigators also ignored Higgins' suspicious late-night visit to the Canton Police Department. That was after a night of drinking, by the way. Why didn't they investigate this? What was so important that Higgins needed to go to the police station at that time, 1:30 in the morning, while drunk, by the way? Why weren't they interested in those facts? Remember, he's an ATF agent. He's a cop, a member of the Blue Wall, and best friends with Brian Albert. He would know that the CPD would be the first to get the call when someone reported John missing or injured. He would know what to look for, what to listen for, to determine if a report had been made and when, and what the response was going to be. You saw the skulking through the hallways with his hood up, moving bags between cars, and of course, that late night mysterious phone call on his cell phone, a phone that you don't have and that you'll never see. All of that, and Michael Proctor never gave him a second look. All of that, and the Commonwealth, who's supposed to be after the truth, didn't call him to the stand. If you have any unanswered questions about Brian Higgins, that's reasonable doubt. The police didn't interview Brian Higgins on January 29th, 2022, but he was at the police station, as we've just seen. You heard evidence that Higgins and Chief of Police Kenny Berkowitz, also good friends, were in the Sallyport together with the SUV for a, quote, wildly long time. Kelly Dever, another Boston cop, told you that. She also told law enforcement agents that she found it, quote, weird that Higgins could have access to that very sensitive evidence, the SUV. Folks, there is never a situation in which a witness, a potential suspect even, should be given access to the evidence in a case. But that's exactly what happened here. Higgins was given unfettered access to that SUV and its taillight nearly immediately, according to Kelly Dever's statement.
Just cover up. Everybody covered up for him.
And it was at that exact time, the exact moments that Higgins would be in that Sallyport, that the 42 minutes of the Sallyport video is just missing. It's just gone, vanished. Well, that's convenient.
Bye, Barbie.
Now put in context the condition of that taillight when it was actually seized in Dayton. It was cracked, but not completely damaged. I ask you to compare and contrast
we should do the live
Officer
on
Kelly Dever, her
Sunday.
attitude,
That's
her demeanor.
true.
That's all for you to
That's
judge.
what I'll
Her
do.
attitude, her demeanor, her truthfulness, her motives from the witness stand. Compare and contrast that to Sergeant Nick Barrows. Who's more believable? Officer Barrows is unattached to any of the players in this
I like
grand play
Barrows better.
directed by Michael Proctor. He's truly independent. And what did he tell you? Was the taillight, he was asked, was the taillight in this condition when Michael Proctor picked up that SUV at 412? His answer? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was cracked, but not completely damaged, not smashed out like that. So how did the taillight get cracked? How did it end up in the condition where it was cracked, as Officer Barrows saw it, but not completely damaged? Well, you don't have to guess.
Absolutely not.
Just watch.
Bye, Barbie.
That's
Have a
how it
good
got cracked.
evening. See you Sunday.
And Judson Welcher's own recreation confirms it. Look at the contact. That's from the Commonwealth's expert. And that further is confirmed by the fact that there were no taillight pieces found in any of the initial searches conducted at the scene. 2 searches, 50-foot area searched. Not a single fragment was found until after Michael Proctor had access to and control of that SUV and its taillight. What does that say about the character and quality of this case? It's revealing what happened here at trial. One of the most dramatic moments probably of the trial, Kelly Dever. How can you trust this investigation when you saw how far a police officer will go? You had a front row seat to the power of police manipulation and police corruption, a front row seat. Kelly Dever was interviewed by a separate law enforcement agency, not a friendly department, not Boston Police Department, not Michael Proctor's MSP, a different independent agency. She told those law enforcement agents in a formal interview that she saw Brian Higgins and Chief Kenneth Berkowitz alone in the Sallyport with the SUV. She was detailed, she was clear, she was unequivocal, she remembered the specifics, she recalled how it made her feel, quote, weird. She recalled that how long Higgins spent, a quote, wildly long time, as she described. These are all incredible details to tell law enforcement. She couldn't have been clearer, she couldn't have been more specific. But then she's put on a witness list and she's subpoenaed by the defense. Oh boy. Then this rookie cop was called up to the police commissioner's office, the same commissioner that was the boss of Brian Albert. They have a meeting, a private meeting, and he says, wink, wink, nod, nod, we support you, Officer Dever.
As long as you do the right thing.
What else is reasonable to believe was said in that meeting? She claimed she couldn't remember. She claimed not to remember if he instructed her to do the right thing. But the commissioner of the Boston Police Department certainly said something to this rookie cop, and all of a sudden, that detailed, unambiguous, unequivocal statement to law enforcement became, what did she say?
A false memory.
Not I didn't say it. She admitted she said it. She admitted she detailed the entire story. She just said, it's a false memory.
What?
So she's called to the commissioner's office to make sure that she would do the right thing. That's why she was called. And now we know what that means. In her words, my entire career depends on what I say here on the stand. I'll quote that again. Quote, my entire career depends on what I say here on the stand. You bet it does. That's how it works. And that's how we got here. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, can you trust the Commonwealth's case? Can you trust their witnesses? Can you trust their evidence?
No.
And here are a few of the highlights. A video that was played in a courtroom and sold as accurate. Turns out it was completely inverted, flipped backward, completely false. The test that formed the basis of their entire theory of the case. Watch closely as Dr. Welcher stands as a surrogate. Is that a righteous test?
Oh, wow.
Or is that a manipulation? Dr. Welcher tried to deceive and fool you by leaning into the car, manipulating the results of his own test.
We're all mad here.
And the truth was revealed by Dr. Benchler. The Commonwealth spent the next hour cross-examining it about how that test was meaningless. It actually didn't mean anything. Well, that's convenient now that we realize it was a manipulated test, and it actually does mean nothing. It didn't represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case. That's what was suggested. If that test does not represent the theory of the Commonwealth's case, really, then why was Dr. Welcher playing dress-up in John O'Keefe's clothes, or identical clothes to John O'Keefe, when he was holding a glass? Why was he holding the glass right behind the vehicle? And why was he standing with his right arm oriented to the right rear taillight if he wasn't trying to recreate the circumstance that is the Commonwealth's entire theory? The Commonwealth stood up here with a straight face and told you they weren't trying to suggest that that's how John was hit by the car. Of course they were trying to suggest that's their theory of the case. They only abandoned it 2 days ago when it was revealed by our experts that it's physically impossible. That silent witness.
Brendan's like, what makes you think that the expert was showing the recreation? I don't know. He's an accident reconstructionist that you brought here that is showing how it's possible for the blue paints to go on his arm once he rubs his arm against the blue paints. That's what we thought you were doing. And Brendan's like, that's not what we were doing. Not at all. You guys are crazy. That is gaslighting, like 101 gaslighting. 101 gaslighting. The person is telling you that what you see with your own eyes is not the truth. And you're like, am I crazy? Am I the crazy one?
That science, that physics has become very pesky to the Commonwealth because there was no collision.
That was such a weird
Dr. Welcher also told you under oath that there were no x-rays taken of John's arm. He tried to deceive you into believing that John's arm might have been broken. I don't know. I didn't see any x-rays, so I can't tell you what the damage was inside the arm. Really? The Commonwealth has had those x-rays in their possession for 3 years. And again, it took the defense to bring out the truth. The x-rays do not fit the Commonwealth's theory, so you weren't shown. And Dr. Welcher wasn't going to admit it. And my goodness, then we get to the sweatshirt. That was a moment.
Ooh.
Mr. Brennan stood here in front of you and dramatically held up John's sweatshirt, not just to the witness, but to you, and asked Dr. Wolf about it multiple times. Specifically, while he was in that plexiglass, asked Dr. Wolf about the multiple holes in the back of the sweatshirt. He interrupted Dr. Wolf. And Dr. Wolf started to look at the sweatshirt and say, well, and he said, how about here? Here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole, here's a hole. Dramatically tapping on that plexiglass.
Testifying.
It's clear what the suggestion was. That the holes in the back of John's sweatshirt were from January 29th. That's the impression that was expected to be left with you. That's the impression that he wanted to leave with you.
That is a lie.
And it's false.
Love it. I
The truth
love
is,
that he's able to
The
say
Commonwealth
that.
created those holes. They aren't holes from road
Oof.
rash. They weren't made on January 29th. Those are cuttings from the Commonwealth's own crime lab, folks. That's what those holes are. And even with 3 prosecutors, all 3 of them, sitting right there in the room at the time, it had to be the defense to correct that record, to bring out the truth. If we hadn't done that, what impression would you folks have been left with? That's more than negligence. That's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Mm.
I'm going to guess that Mr. Brennan's not going to say much about this, about the fraud that was attempted on you. And if he doesn't, that speaks louder than any concocted excuse that the Commonwealth might come up with.
Challenge
Shameful.
accepted.
It's shameful. We are after the truth in this courtroom. You're entitled to it.
You can
Demand it.
handle the truth, though. Ah,
Why would the
sorry.
Commonwealth stoop to a stunt like that? It's desperation. They know what you now know, what their experts know. There was no collision. So now we've reached the final moments of the trial, and you've seen the facts, and you've seen the evidence, and we've just talked about dozens and dozens and dozens of facts that are reasonable doubt. Each one of them are reasonable doubts. These facts, these note cards that you're looking at piled high, one on top of another, literally stacks and stacks of them covering the table. As you mentally sift through those cards, realize that every one of them is a massive hole in the Commonwealth's case. Every single one of the note cards represents a hole in the Commonwealth's case. If you're holding mentally even one of those cards, you're holding reasonable doubt, folks. You're holding a not guilty verdict. Reasonable doubt is not a sliding scale. It's a wall. If the Commonwealth cannot get over every one of these dozens of walls, you have to acquit Karen Read. The truth is, Karen Read is not guilty. Not because of technicalities, but because the facts, the law, the science, the physics, the data, they all say so. They demand it. The Commonwealth does not have a theory about how John was hit by the car. They haven't even shown you that it's possible that he was hit by a car. And the reason they haven't is because it's not possible that he was hit by a car. There was no collision. Your job is not to do their job, their burden entirely. It's theirs. They have to prove this case and their theory beyond all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. And not only do they not have a theory, they can't prove one that doesn't exist. All you need to know is that the Commonwealth failed. They failed to provide you with a truthful representation. They failed to prove the essence of their case, that John was even hit by a car to begin with. They failed to prove any intent on the part of Karen Read because she has none. They failed to investigate the actual suspects in this case. They failed to present a lead investigator to you. They failed to justify the perjured testimony that you heard discussed in this case. They failed to hold accountable an officer who came in here and lied to you and claimed false memories so she could do the right thing to cover for a fellow cop or cops.
Wow.
They failed to maintain a fair and unbiased and honest investigation. They failed to present you with the truth. And this is what you get. An investigation that's riddled with errors and omissions and a rush to judgment and conflicted and corrupted from the start. Every part of it. That is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. How can they ask you to be morally certain based on this evidence? It's a tragedy. When the government fails so completely, so catastrophically, when there are dozens and dozens of points of reasonable doubt on the table, your duty, your oath is clear. Your sworn obligation under the law is to acquit Karen Read. Not just because you can, because you must. Justice demands it. Do not let the Commonwealth get away with this. Don't let them get away with this. Do not endorse and sanction an investigation that is broken and corrupted top to bottom. But just as importantly, do not let Michael Proctor get away with it. And make no mistake about it, folks. If you convict Karen Read of anything, if you convict her of anything, science, the physics, the data, they lose. But tragically,
Michael Proctor wins.
Remember his texts. Something stinks. Yeah, the serious charges will be brought on the girl.
She's
fucked.
effed.
Could you ever say to yourself, this is justice? The fact is there was no collision. A car did not kill John O'Keefe. So I ask you, let your voice be heard, not in whispers, but in truth. Let the community feel through your verdict that justice cannot be bent and that it will not be buried. Find Karen Read not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Thank you.
Woo! Let's pause to see the faces of all the people here behind the defense team, the supporters of the victim, Mr. O'Keefe, but unfortunately the people who are who firmly believe that Karen Read is guilty of this, including his family, his mother in blue, his father, the one that was sleeping through the whole closing argument that we just heard. And then we have these ladies next to the mother who I don't know. Some of them might be Jennifer McCabe's sisters, their ex-girlfriend. They don't look happy. They're looking at the jury. Let me make this a normal speed so I can take a look at some other reactions. Da, da, da. Okay, Paul Keefe, the brother, is there. Oh no, we're not. What we're not gonna do today, is listen to Brennan. Because today's a good day. What did I say when I got here, guys? I am full of hope and love and positive vibes. I do not want to ruin my Friday the 13th. I am absolutely not listening to Brennan. To Hank. No, not today. Not today. So, without further ado, guys, I will say goodbye to you. And we're gonna come live. We're gonna be live on Sunday again. I think either at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I want to thank you for hanging out. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you're rewatching this after, because of course it was impromptu, I didn't tell nobody we were gonna go live. I just had to share with you guys. Please leave a comment. Let me know. And check out the closing argument, the mock closing argument that is going to be released tonight at 10 p.m. And if you want to listen to it at 2x speed, it is already in the channel. Thank you so much for all your support, for your presence, for your company. And I will see you guys on Sunday. Karina says, take a bow, AJ. Take a bow, AJ. That's right. So guys, enjoy your evening. Relax, maybe, do some breathing exercises and detach from the case a little bit. I know you guys won't. I know I'll see you on all the chats probably later, but I'll see you Sunday. So have a great rest of your night and see you guys soon. Thank you for watching, guys. Bianca MMM, your go-to place for mind meditation and motivation to elevate your life and keep you entertained. I'm passionate about exploring the human mind and psychology, and here we dive into court proceedings, body language analysis, and sprinkle in a bit of humor along the way. You will also find content to boost your personal growth physically and mentally, featuring quick meditation techniques and uplifting messages to kickstart your day. Your support means the world to me. Until next time, take care and stay positive.